Okay, hello. I'm so excited to be here with a special guest today. Mellie, I'm so happy that you reached out and shared your story. I can't wait for our viewers to hear what you have to say and what you've been up to. So please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mellie, and I'm known as the Girl Candy on Instagram. At the age of 13, I started getting sick, and basically to shorten things, I lost the ability to eat or drink anything by mouth because I have a condition called gastroparesis and Crohn's disease. So I've needed a feeding tube to get nourishment and to survive for about 6 years now. And so when I was about, I'd say 15, I started kind of thinking about the idea of modeling because of the fact that I didn't see anyone in the magazines or on TV like me. So when you're young and going through something like this, it can really mess with your self-confidence because you don't see anyone else like you. So with that, I kind of decided that I wanted to work on my own self-confidence because it was really low with having the feeding tube and everything and being so different. So I started modeling to hopefully help my self-confidence and to help others so they didn't have to feel like they were different. So they were able to see someone like them that is doing something in the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to confirm, on Instagram, the girl who can't eat, that's the handle, correct? Awesome.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, and you have a ton of followers. I know that people are interested, and I love that you are opening your story up so that other people feel comfortable with whatever difference they have.
Yeah, I've worked really hard on it and being able to help others. I'm really big into also being very personal with my audience, like answering messages, questions, everything like that. It's just it's really important to me because I know that being that young and going through something that not everyone has a support system. So even if I'm the person that they go to talk to, I'm always happy to do that. And it's been my biggest honor to be the first 2Feb model to walk in New York Fashion Week. And I'm hoping that I'll continue to be able to bring that more into the industry, and so that people can see that a disability doesn't mean you can't follow your dreams, because you definitely can.
So I'm so glad you went there because that's where I was going. You have walked in New York Fashion Week 2 times.
Yes.
Tell me about this. Did you reach out and share your story, or did they know that you had a tube feeding when you were selected? Like, tell us how that went down.
So I actually met the first designer I walked for at a modeling event that I did. She is Kelly Lyerly's mother, which she's the grandmother of the Tiara twins who were on Toddlers and Tiaras. I'm really close with them, and so she does New York Fashion Week. So she asked me to apply so that I could potentially go as one of the models in Fashion Week, and she picked me. And so yeah, and she knew about my feeding tube because it's pretty. I don't really like make it a big deal like it's the entire thing of who I am, because at the same time I am me, but I do make sure people are aware that I have it because it is important. It's an important part of me because it's kept me alive for 6 years. Mm-hmm. So it was really huge to be able to do New York Fashion Week, especially with a feeding tube. And I remember when I went, all the messages I got from people who also have feeding tubes and how huge it is for them. And I guess for me, whenever I walk the runway, always my mind, I'm thinking about all these different faces of these people who follow me, these people who can't do that type of stuff. Maybe they're bedbound or something. So seeing someone do it is such a huge deal.
Absolutely. And so obviously you could walk the runway and no one would even know that you have a tube feeding, right? But the stunning pictures that you sent us, and I'm going to share those as well, show that you do have a tube feeding. So was that something that you requested, or is that something, how did that come about? to have that conversation visually?
Well, actually, when it comes to like the feeding tube showing, it was actually the designer's idea because, you know, it's up to them to what they want to design. And basically, they wanted to design something where my feeding tube was showing. So, like, I had 2 different gowns this year. One was by Bella Inch Couture and one was by Snooty Booty Designs. The one by Bella Inch Couture, that one had like a little hole where my feeding tube could come out, and it was a very beautiful dress. And then the one for Snooty Booty, it had like a crop top and you could clearly see the feeding tube. What I liked about that was both designs were completely different in the aspect of one is, you know, it's not showing it, but it still has a place for it to come out. And then the other one is fully showing the feeding tube. And I think from that, I learned a lot in the aspect of it made me want to hopefully start working on eventually getting a designer to start making it where there can be feeding tube accessible like dresses, because a lot of kids who go to prom and stuff, and not everyone wants to have to wear a crop top too. So it really had me thinking a lot.
Right. Right. And so just being able to make that statement. So
Yeah.
so tell us about that. So you have a dream, it sounds
Yes.
like. Tell
Yes,
us about that.
Basically, I enjoy modeling. It's really what it really makes me feel alive when I do it, and I want to be able to help others so that they can know that they can do anything they want. They can follow their dreams. I mean, I just had a port placed, and so I guess that if I'm going to New York Fashion Week again this year, I guess that'll also be the first female model, not also be the first model with a port going. But I think that it would be really great to get more accessible like feeding tube clothing and just really big stuff, because I feel like sometimes we're kind of left out because I don't really see that much like feeding tube models and stuff in big things, I guess. And I did have like some people like writing me about that different stuff before. So
Right. I mean, I think there are people living every day that
yeah,
that on a feeding tube, that because a lot of people's perception, and it all
yeah,
comes down, I'm sure you feel the same, to this whole perception of what a disability looks like, or
yeah.
what it looks like to be tube fed. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people would be very surprised to know the amount of people living around them that,
Yeah.
function every day, work, do their thing, and they just don't eat through their mouth.
Well, yeah, and the thing is also, I mean, like my friend who has a feeding tube, that she talked a little bit about it on her page, but like people think of having a feeding tube looks one way. Like they think instantly if you have a feeding tube, you're supposed to be thin and all this different stuff. But no, someone can be malnourished and be at a healthy weight. I
Mhm.
mean, needing a feeding tube is based on if you can't eat, if you can't get the calories you need a feeding tube, basically. So yeah, and I mean, I went through a lot of stuff when I was a teenager with being very embarrassed of going out in public and barely wanting to leave my home because originally I had the nasal gastric tube. It's in your nose, and a lot of people would stare. I remember one year it was Christmas time and we went out to go Christmas shopping, and this guy, he looked at me and then he looked away, and I heard him say to his friend, I don't know what that is, but that's disgusting.
Mhm.
That at that time, like when you're young, that is so hard to deal with. And I
Mhm.
think it happens all the time because people don't understand what it is. And a big part in our world is if we educate people, it can kind of help to stop from people accidentally saying something that could hurt someone.
Yeah.
So maybe by me doing this and being a model, it'll kind of educate people. So kids don't have to go through that. They don't have to be bullied because of their condition and all that different stuff.
Absolutely. And so do you have an agent? Are you working to get into, advertising, anything
Um,
outside of the runway?
I am actually currently basically my own agent because it's been a lot easier for me personally because then I can know what I'm booking. I know when I'm well enough to book something. I know when I'm not well enough to book something. So right now I am my own agent. So
Mhm.
basically all work would be me kind of working with people and emailing back and forth and stuff like that right now at this
Yeah.
moment.
So how's that going for you?
It's been really good, actually, because I feel like I've been able to more be personable and communicate with people. And I know my body. I know when I'm not well enough to do something. I know when I am well enough to do something. So it's definitely been working out pretty well.
I love it. And so, just on kind of the statement that the designers made on the runway, do you find that brands are interested in, ensuring that, the consumer that's obviously visually reading that ad, is aware that they are, representing differences within their advertising message?
I'm definitely, right now I've been kind of working on trying to get more awareness so we can kind of get the attention of brands to be able to really get things moving, because I really think there could be a lot done here to have people who have feeding tubes have more accessible clothing, because it is a big deal. I mean, when you have a feeding tube, because I mean, sometimes you don't want to always wear crop tops, but sometimes you want to have something like say a one-piece outfit. It's very hard because you either have to have it go through the top or go through the bottom, and that's kind of aggravating. Like, I've realized that myself. And the kind of feeding tube I have right now is it's called a dangler, which isn't it isn't a Mickey button, which you have to put an extension on so it hangs down, so it's not as long. So I think it's more of a big deal for especially those kind of situations, to be able to have more accessible clothing and be able to wear things that you usually can't, because wearing one-piece outfits with a feeding tube is very hard.
Right. You need to call up Tommy Hilfiger,
Yeah, I've had a few people, they tagged him on my one post talking.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Start researching the whole family. Get in touch.
Yeah.
I think they'd be receptive.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've been kind of trying to think of in my mind is the fact that everyone's feeding tube is placed in a different place. Right. So if you make an outfit, it would be kind of hard because some people have theirs higher, some lower, some right, some left. So it just depends on their personal anatomy.
That's true. Yeah.
That would be the hardest thing about even going about making a clothing line, because you can't just go off of where my feeding tube is, because someone else's would be in a different place.
Okay. That's interesting. That is definitely interesting. Yes. Well, tell me, I mean, our goal here at Changing the Face of Beauty, obviously, is to ensure that the disability community is seen.
Yeah, definitely.
People ask me all the time, do you represent this difference? Do you represent, I haven't seen this difference. I get, and it's similar to the situation you're talking about with the anatomy of the feeding tube.
Yeah.
I try to explain to the community that when we have a difference seen, we are all represented. So with you walking on the runway, I feel like my daughter, who happens to have Down syndrome, is represented because you are part of her community indirectly. Yeah. And so that's kind of what we focus on. We focus very little about, what makes us different, and more about why we're all the same. We're all consumers. Yeah. We all consume goods. We deserve to be spoken to. So tell me what your feeling is on consumerism, and obviously billboards, what you see through the internet and on TV. What is your viewpoint on representation of the disability community?
I think that with a lot of things, I guess I would say, I know there are a few things when in situations where they say someone plays a character and they have a disability, I feel like with certain situations, they could actually get someone who has that actual disability, because it's there are people who have that disability who are in the industry, so not using them and using someone who is healthy and just putting them in that part, it's kind of hard, because someone with disabilities, they're trying to get representation, but it's hard to get representation when someone is having their part, I guess. So,
I cannot agree more.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. And people tell me all the time, it's Hollywood, it's acting, and that's what it is. Acting is acting. So you can be whoever you want. And I get that and agree with that to some extent, but the disability community has such a small amount of roles that they could ever play. That doesn't make sense when it comes.
Once there's a role that they could play, it's given to someone healthy. So either way, they're never allowed to get the role of the healthy person. But then when there's a role that's out there for them, the person who isn't sick gets it. I mean,
Absolutely.
I guess people see it as not wanting to deal with it, but you don't know what that person's capable of if you don't ever give them a shot.
Right. What do you think stands in the way of more inclusion in advertising per se?
It's a hard one. Honestly, I definitely think like when it comes to like our industry, definitely things have slowly gotten a lot better and they are more accepting, but I definitely think we still have a good ways to go and have representation because I mean, truth is it's a big industry. There's a lot of people. So it's just, oh, my mom's saying something because I got a lot of messages after the Aries campaign came out because they did all the different things. The only thing that wasn't there was no feeding tube. But I think that definitely our industry is getting somewhere with, they've definitely opened a lot up for people who have disabilities, but I do think there is places that, you know, there can be more done, you know?
Right. Consistently working to have more diversity. That's interesting to me. I knew quite a few of the women that were in that Aerie campaign, and I bet reach out to them, send them a message, because that's such a perfect example of how lingerie works perfectly with that particular difference, you know, because obviously in your lingerie, people know that you have a, you know, a tube feeding. So I bet you they would be receptive to that. I actually was walking by a store a couple of weeks ago and they had this beach picture, and, you know, up front, there was this beautiful woman who happened to be a wheelchair user and in a bikini. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Because again, I hear from so many adults with disability that, you know, hey, disability is sexy. You know, we have the same needs and wants as everyone else. And finally, at least Aerie is catching on and realizing that, hey, this is an enormous consumer group. You know,
it is.
I mean, it's a good business decision.
Yeah. And a lot of people go through different situations, and some people you might not even know have a chronic illness or disability. Like, I met a lot of people who I would never guess it in a million years, and then they write me and they reach out and they say, hey, you really inspired me. I have gastroparesis or something like this, you know, something I would never know. I would never guess. And so it's huge because some people aren't as vocal about having something, and they don't have to be, but every once in a while it's good to have someone to kind of inspire you. And like, that's why I try to be as vocal as I can be about it, because it is hard at times, but it's just something I choose to do because I feel like a lot of people need it.
They absolutely do. What would you tell the younger version of you? So you've had the tube feeding for how long? Did you say 4 years?
6.
6 years. So if you were to go back 6 years ago, because someone obviously is in that spot right now, you know, what do you say to them?
Particularly if I were to go back and be able to tell myself something, I actually wrote this recently, I would tell myself to love myself. That would be what my one thing would be, is to tell myself to love myself, because when you're going through a situation like that, sometimes you get kind of lost. Like, you wonder why it's never enough whenever like you look for love through people. And I think the thing is, sometimes you need to just love yourself, whether you have a disability, whether you're well, no matter what, because it can be hard, like, to love yourself sick and everything. So I think what I would mainly say is just love yourself and accept yourself, because if anything else, if nobody else does, at least you can do it.
Right. And you are all you've got, you know, right? Our bodies, that's all we've got. And so I had a question for you. Oh my gosh, I had one more question. So if you go back to that moment right? When they told you that you were no longer going to be able to eat by mouth any longer. What if there was examples of people living full lives that happen to have a feeding tube out there, you know, previous to that moment? What kind of difference would that have made for you?
It probably would have made a pretty big difference, because I would have been able to see that it wasn't the end and there was more to life than being able to eat. And I think that's a very big thing. And at the time, like, I had no friends who had the same condition as me for the longest time. So that makes it even harder, because then you feel like you're so alone. And I think a lot of people get that. And then I have friends now who obviously have the same condition, but when I was like 13, 14 years old, and it definitely would have helped to know that there are like other people fully living their life with it, because it can be really hard when you're that young having something like that going on.
And you think about it, we have social media now, right? And you have this amazing account. And so every person getting that diagnosis now, you know, I'm sure you have hashtags that you hashtag things so that people find you. And I mean, the fact that they can go out and find, you know, a beautiful young woman who's living her life to the fullest and be able to link arms with you, even indirectly, and just know that you're doing it, you know, and strength in numbers, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been like a process as I've grown, and the more messages I get from people about inspiring them, it never gets old hearing, oh, you inspire me, or you make me want to do this or that. It never gets old, and I'm always so glad to respond and be able to say, basically, just thank you for reading my story, for listening. I mean, it's a huge deal, because I never feel alone, because I always have people writing me. It's just amazing. And I never want anyone else to feel alone either. I guess I don't consider my followers. They're kind of like friends, because I'm able to talk to them and be honest about what I'm going through. And in return, I allow them to be honest about what they're going through, because sometimes we all just need somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so if you had goals, you know, lined up for your future, what does that look like? What is a couple of your big goals?
I would really love to be able to get like more coverage on like magazines and stuff, of basically like me being able to represent models with feeding tubes, as well as just myself, because I really enjoy modeling. Like I have a feeding tube, but even without it, I love modeling and I love acting. So it's just something that I really enjoy. And every time I do it, it always reminds me of why it makes me happy, because it just really does. It's so fulfilling for me, and I really want to keep doing that and keep showing that we can continue to follow our dreams no matter what. So yeah.
I love that. You're beautiful and you're very good at what you do. I mean, your pictures are stunning, honestly.
Yeah,
so.
thank you so much.
You have a gift. I always say not everybody is supposed to be in front of the camera, but there are a lot of people out there that were made for the camera, and that is you. So I believe that you will get where you want to go. And honestly, your story is so profound, and it's about overcoming and just loving yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. I think going on this journey of modeling has also been like a journey of learning how to love myself at the same time, and it's really helped. Like, people usually, they think of modeling, a lot of people don't think of loving yourself, they think of such a cutthroat industry, but instead, for me, it's been quite the opposite. It's helped me to learn how to love every unique feature about myself, because we're all uniquely and beautifully different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it's just amazing. So I always say it's important to love yourself, and no, it's not a perfect straight line. It really isn't. Like, loving yourself is kind of like, some days it'll be up, some days you'll feel a little down. I mean, that's how life works, but you just got to kind of work through it.
Absolutely. And I think your story speaks, volumes. So send those letters to those brands because they want to hear from you, and we all think that they know how we feel and what we're thinking and how important it is to us. And they don't. If people don't have exposure to any type of difference, and I can speak from the point of view of myself because I didn't, before my daughter. And so I think there are so many people in decision-making positions that just don't have us on the radar at all.
Yeah.
So it's our job to share our story and our journey. And I love that you can do that and that you are doing that publicly. But send those emails, girl. These brands need you. And I'm going to be cheering you on.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to be seeing you a lot of places. I know it. Let's see here. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Sometimes my... Anyway, thank you. Is there anything else you want to share that I didn't touch on?
I've been in a few films recently. I recently
Awesome.
I recently played in Operation Resist. I'm going to be playing The Light We Save, and then also Jailhouse Wedding. So I've also been doing some acting as well, which has been really fun as well. So
fantastic. Do you live in LA? I didn't even ask you where you live. Are you?
Oh, I'm from North Carolina.
Okay.
With modeling and everything, I'm always willing to travel, always. But North Carolina.
You're in North Carolina?
Yep, that's where I'm from.
There you go. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's funny, the industry, right? It's hurry up and wait. People think, oh, I want to do this. And especially when I talk to mothers, I'm like, okay, are you ready and prepared to quit your job? Because it's pretty much hurry up, go, that's it.
And for a lot of reasons, it's kind of like sometimes if you really have a dream, you got to just kind of take that leap. Even if it's not logical sometimes to follow your dream, that's what you kind of got to do.
A lot of truth right there. A lot of truth. Fantastic. Well, I so appreciate you. Sorry about that. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. And I can't wait for our followers to get to know you a little bit better and then get over there and follow you on The Girl That Can't Eat, correct? I want to say it correctly.
Girl Who Can't Eat.
Who Can't Eat. Yes, your handle over on Instagram, because I think that there are a lot of people that can funnel a lot of inspiration from your story and just going after your dreams. So congratulations for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.